Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. It's really an honor to be on this call with so many great minds and to share this space of listening and contemplation to the Dharma. I hope you all can hear me well. Just in the last few minutes, my network started acting sketchy, so I kicked all of my kids off their devices. And so hopefully no other problems. So as Reverend Parada said, I'm a teacher. I've been teaching government in Cypress, California. I'm entering my 20th year this upcoming school year. And I have the 3 kids, and we attend OCBC, where I am one of the minister's assistants. I wasn't always Buddhist. I actually was baptized Melkite Catholic. You may not have even ever heard of that. It's kind of a cross between Greek. My mom is Palestinian. She came to this country when she was 10. And my dad is what I call just a regular white guy born here in the United States of European ancestry. And both of them actually were raised going to Catholic school, but they didn't do anything really beyond baptizing me as far as my religious journey. I did attend church with my grandma and my aunt, who was my godmother. So I feel like I really tried to be a Catholic. I even was made somebody's godmother. But by, I would say, college, I just considered myself to be an atheist and someone who didn't need anything. I was kind of jaded about religion. I didn't really like what I heard growing up in the Catholic Church. Didn't resonate with me. So I was sure that I didn't need anything. I ended up meeting my husband at work. He taught in the classroom next door to me, and he grew up at OCBC. He was Japanese American. His family, they were kind of the type of Buddhists that would go to memorial services and special occasions. They weren't particularly devout like some of the families that attend temple. When we got married and had kids, he wanted to raise the kids at OCBC. I wasn't against that. I just told him that it had to be his gig. I still, at that point, wasn't interested in being anything. I didn't dislike Buddhism. I just really didn't want to be part of any religion. Actually, the first temple I ever went to was in Sebastopol. I heard that someone here was from Sebastopol. We used to go up north to visit his son, and it was relatively close to the Sebastopol temple. So that was my first introduction, and everything I heard sounded great. It just didn't feel like really it was my home, if that makes sense. So anyway, we had kids, and he would take them to Dharma school. Sometimes I would go, and most of the time I would stay home on Sundays, usually with the baby. And this went on until 2016, when he unexpectedly passed away. So this was, our kids were like 6, 3, and 13 months. I consider that to be like the diaper years of our life. And so that obviously very traumatic, lots of things happening, but you have a lot of big decisions to make when your partner passes away, but there's also a lot of small things. Not that Dharma school is a small thing, but that was one of the things I had to figure out. I had been very clear with him that it was his gig, he had to take them, but with him not around, I had to make a decision of whether or not we continue doing this with me driving them and taking them, or stop going. And honestly, at that time, it could have gone either way, I feel. But for a variety of reasons, I decided that I was going to continue taking the kids on Sundays. Still not going to be a Buddhist myself, but just like their chauffeur. So we started doing that. The thing is, my husband was kind of a cheater. He would show up right as service was ending and kind of slide in there before Dharma school, drop the kids off, chit chat with the dads in the garden. And I'm a rule follower. So as soon as it was my job, I was like, okay, well, now I have to go to service. I got to do the whole thing right. So that's what we did. I felt like a total fish out of water. First of all, it's very difficult wrangling 3 kids, including a baby, to Dharma school and sit through family service. So we were always late. Reverend Harada mostly led the services. They'd be chanting already when we would be showing up, trying to find a seat. And I was sweating, and the baby on my back, wiggling around, trying to grab for people. It was very stressful. And at that time, like, still, I consider myself just the chauffeur of the kids. So you would never have seen me bow or do gasho or offer incense even. I would hold the service book just so I wouldn't look more like I was standing out. Like I felt like I was really standing out because it didn't belong there. So we did this, and I feel like this is when I started, obviously I started doing my accidental listening. And I didn't know at the time, but my mind was starting to be ripe to hearing these teachings. I would say for me, I heard earlier about the Saturday service. For me, it was the adult study after family service that was kind of my gateway to listening even more deeply. So they would do the adult study after family service. So the kids would go to Dharma school. And I kind of felt like I was just loitering, waiting for them. So it was an opportunity to go somewhere and look like I was doing something. And they also offered donuts and coffee, which was very enticing. I could keep the baby quiet with something to eat. I could have some coffee. And then I was listening. And where service kind of felt intimidating because I didn't understand the traditions. I didn't understand really any of it. It was all new to me. But adult study, it was like reading an essay and having a discussion. And I'm a teacher, so that's what we like to do. We think that's fun. So that was like something that I could plug into. So week after week, lots of listening. I realized that it was really something appealing to me. Buddhism talks a lot about death and suffering, but I think it does more than that. Over time, I realized that it also teaches us a lot about ourselves. And how to deal with the world around us. So my mind was ripe. At this point, I feel like I was open now to considering myself to be a Buddhist and not just the kid's chauffeur. So I actually want to focus on the benefit of knowing the true self, which Reverend Akahoshi had talked about in his lecture back in March. So, attachment to the self, it causes us to suffer, and we have a really difficult time letting go. And for me at that time, like in the early days of raw grief, that's exactly what I was doing. I was trying to cling to that previous version of myself where I was a wife and we had an intact family. And in my mind, I had like woven this different reality that was like the ideal life. And this was my personal hell, which, obviously in a lot of ways it was. But, even if my husband had lived, there's no way I would have stayed that previous person, right? I learned about impermanence. Like we're always going to be changing and evolving. That life, that person was never going to stay, etched in stone. I was always going to change. He was always going to change. So learning to let go and stop clinging to that previous version, because, you go through all these like stages of like anger, like, why did this happen? Why do other people get to go home to their families? What did I do to deserve this? Like all these different emotions, and you go through the different stages of grief, and it's not linear. It's you're bouncing around for quite a while. So sorry, someone muted me. I think Buddhism really helped me cope during those early stages of grief. But the thing is, like, I had a blind spot in my path. I thought like, okay, I'll get over this traumatic event. And you don't really like get over it. You just learn to like deal with it and compartmentalize it and learn from it and so forth. But I thought, okay, well, I'll figure that out. And then that's it. Like I've paid my suffering dues. Everything is going to be smooth sailing from here on out. But of course, that's not how life works. As I would quickly find out, there's always something happening, something going on. I would have never imagined back in 2016 that I'd be dealing with COVID with my 3 kids, all of us quarantined at home doing Zoom school. None of that I ever expected. So there's always something, and then you deal with COVID, and then there's something else. So I feel like, you overcome one challenge, is going to be new challenges. This week, your life may feel like everything is figured out and is wonderful and amazing. And next week, you could feel like you're unraveling. So I heard this quote by Shin Shonen. He said, each of us in outward bearing makes a show of being wise, good, and dedicated. But so great are our greed, anger, perversity, and conceit that we are filled with all forms of malice and cunning. So for me, like when I read this, I realized like, yeah, it's like a constant work in progress. And I feel like Buddhism has offered me tools to continue to work on myself, to realize that this is normal. I'm human. And it's just, it's a way of dealing with life's challenges. Now, Shin Buddhists chant Namo Amida Butsu, and this is to bring about sort of an awakening. It's considered to be a transformative experience, helping us reach our full potential as being authentic, sincere humans. We do this through deep hearing. As a convert, as a former Catholic, this was very challenging for me for many years. In fact, even in recent history, I'm constantly asking our minister, like, well, I heard someone refer to it in this way. Is that true? Because I don't know if I really like sign on to that. And so he's always having to answer my questions. I read an article recently that's really helped me think about being a Shin Buddhist. It was written in 2017. It's by John Cagg and Clancy Martin. It was published in the New York Times. It's called In Dark Times, Dirty Hands Can Still Do Good. I highly recommend this essay. It's amazing, but I'm just going to share with you an excerpt that resonated with me. In it, they said, some Buddhists worry that Pure Land Buddhism takes the Dharma too far in the direction of resignation, away from the world in favor of faith. But resignation has its virtues. It means that you might have the chance to get over yourself and consider the power and vulnerability of something else. Resignation is not regarded as a virtue in our society, but perhaps it should be. Perhaps knowing when to let go, when to relinquish control, when to free ourselves from the habits of thought that so often constrain us. And this is true prudence, what many ancient sages regarded as the virtue of virtues. So for me personally, that's not my personality. I have to constantly fight my inclination to want to like bite down like a bulldog on a problem and like, I'm going to handle it myself and I'm going to take care of it. And I'm going to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders, which is not a very smart thing to do if you're an only parent with 3 kids. This year for me was like really difficult. My kids are getting older and they're super busy and we're active in a lot of different things. And I just like by spring felt myself kind of just collapsing, like mentally, like I've bitten off more than I can chew. And this idea of kind of letting go and kind of being vulnerable and listen and sit back really resonated with me. So I feel like Shin Buddhism for me has offered me this dynamic opportunity to practice something that keeps evolving as I evolve. It's not a one size fits all. You can ask questions, which is not something I felt like I could do as a Catholic. You can keep learning, and I'm discovering new things about myself as a person and also as a Buddhist as I continue to study. Reverend Akahoshi said in his previous lecture that one of the unique things about the Shin practice is it's one of receiving and not of achieving. And hearing is receiving. So like I said, I am the kind of person that took AP classes in high school and graduated from college in 3 years. And like, I'm an overachiever and all these things that eventually like makes you crash and burn. And this idea of, okay, just, take it a little bit easier. You don't have to achieve anything. You don't have to earn anything. You just have to listen and hear and receive is very appealing to me. So I feel like my practice has changed a lot from entering it in those stages of early grief to just continuing to live my life and continue to deal with life's challenges. Now, one of my favorite books on Shin Buddhism is Ocean by Dr. Kenneth Tanaka, and he talks about the analogy of the sailor who falls overboard into the ocean. And he's like trying to swim and survive, but he's getting tired and he's lost and thinks at this point he's going probably to die. And he then, right, like where he feels like it's the end, he hears a voice that says, let go of your striving. You're fine just as you are. Namo Amida Butsu. So then he turns over and he floats on his back and he realizes he's going to survive. Any of us who have been in the pool floating on your back, it's relaxing, right? And you don't feel like you're going to drown. And he realized that he was fine actually all along, but nothing about the ocean changed, just his perspective. And so for me, this is really a great analogy. Personally, like this year, just this idea of letting go and continue with my Shin Buddhist practice and seeing where it takes me. So just to kind of in closing, suffering, it has a tendency to lead a person into this pit of self-centered, egocentric wallowing. It's like a pity party, right? When you really fall down that pit. And it's hard because when you're suffering and you're feeling terrible and you're watching the world around you, it's hard not to be angry or sad. You probably have a lot of great reasons to be upset with the world. But the problem is, like, it doesn't help you. Even if you have the best reasons, it doesn't make you feel any better. So I feel like there's no reward in the suffering. You have to eventually be able to see the good in the world. You have to be able to see the joy, the happiness. So through gratitude, be able to focus on those moments instead of the worst moments. And for me, a gratitude practice and Namo Amida Butsu, this is how we can address our true nature and maximize our potential for, just human fulfillment, finding that inner peace, living a life of happiness. And here I am, a Palestinian, German, American girl from Orange County, California, practicing Shin Buddhism. I feel very grateful that I was able to find it, even with the crazy circumstances that led me to it. Thank you again for having me today. I appreciate having the opportunity to speak.